good afternoon and welcome to the first of these Story Live sessions. The concept is that I invite a different business colleague once or twice a week to share a little bit about their background, how they came to be doing what they're doing, so their backstory, but also if they've got an additional story to share with you for some learning, because my whole mission is to get 1 million people sharing their stories. So I'm making a start here with one today. But my whole thing is about when you share a story, it gives some learning or gives some inspiration to somebody else to go and take some action. So that's the whole purpose behind these. And I'm delighted to welcome as our first guest today, Lisa Moore. So Lisa, welcome, and for being the first person on Story Live. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel. How exciting to be the first person to come on and see how this all goes.
Lisa, now we've met through the Athena network, haven't we? Initially, you were a member of Athena. You came to speak at one of the groups when I was regional director with Athena. And I think that the story you're going to share is similar to the one that you gave when you came to speak at one of my meetings in Liphook. But you now are a regional director yourself, aren't you? So
I am, yes.
Yeah. So over to you then, Lisa, please, to tell us a little bit about, who you are, what you're doing, and how you came to be doing it, because I know you've got more than one string to your bow at the moment.
Yes, I have rather a lot of hats, and I've got here because of things that happened in the past. So just to introduce myself, so my name is Lisa Moore, and I have a business called Fit for More, which is all about health and well-being. But I also hold the hat of regional director for the Athena network in Sussex here. But I do a couple of other things, but I'm not going to talk about those today. So my story starts in 2011, and I was running down the Mall in front of Buckingham Palace in the 2011 London Marathon. It was my 40th birthday, not actually that day, but about 3 days later. And I decided to run the London Marathon. I had 2 small children. I was married. I had started Fit for More, but it was more of a just make some money teaching exercise classes. But I distinctly remember running down the Mall to go over the finish line and expecting this amazing feeling of euphoria, of pride, of everything when I ran over that finish line. But there was nothing. I ran over the finish line. They put the medal around my neck. They cut the timing thing off my shoe. And I felt completely and utterly alone. Empty, alone. There didn't seem to be anybody around me, even though there was. And it was an epiphany moment. We all have those epiphany moments. And it made me realize that I needed to do something about my life. My marriage was very unhappy. I was very unhappy. I'd lost my identity. I'd lost my sense of purpose. And so that was sort of a starting point to a big change. And it led me to make the brave decision to leave my marriage. There were lots of reasons behind it. I tried a lot of ways to make it work, but it hadn't worked. And so I had from running the marathon, that had given me the courage to recognize how strong I was. So I left. I had 2 small children. I had no money. I left my home, and I ended up moving actually here where I am now, in my mum and dad's house, and moving back in with my parents. And then I started my journey to create a business and to where I am today. The biggest things that I struggled with was worrying about what other people thought about me, and feeling like a fraud and feeling like I'd let everybody down.
Yeah, can I just ask you, because I often use the example of when you make a change in one area of your life, it can go on to impact another area that you weren't even aware that you wanted to change. So when you made the decision to run the marathon, was it the first time you'd ever run the marathon?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you made that decision to sign up for the marathon, did you have any awareness? I mean, you presumably were aware that your marriage wasn't great, but did you have any awareness that a big change needed to happen?
No, not at all. Not at all. And it was the reason I wanted to do the marathon was to raise money for my daughter's godmother, who happened to work at St Catherine's Hospital in Crawley. And I wanted to raise money for charity. And I think the other reason was I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I never imagined that it was gonna bring this on. But I think the peace that you get from going out and doing those long runs, you know, you're running for hours, you suddenly become able to hear what's really going on inside you.
Okay.
And the fact that you are doing all of that training, you recognize how strong you are, because it was a horrible winter before the 2011 marathon. There was a lot of cold, a lot of ice, and you're doing your long runs in the dark and in the cold and in the wind and everything else. So you really have got to find that inner strength from somewhere.
And so that's the thing that happens, isn't it? That you gain confidence. You must have realized that you had perhaps more grit than you realized. I don't know. But somehow it shifts something within you, so you become ready to now, you know, obviously not everybody listening is going to want to run a marathon, or indeed but it is that parallel of confidence, isn't it? And I used to notice it with my children, that you know, they perhaps go up, they'd have one improvement. It might be that they went up a class at swimming classes or something, and they'd go up a book level in the reading scheme, and then there would usually be a third thing, and it just seemed to be this sort of parallel shift. So it almost doesn't matter where you start making a change in your life, as long as it's positive, because it will impact somewhere else as well, won't it?
Yeah, and it's that action of stepping outside of your comfort zone as well. You know, running marathons pushes you outside of your comfort zone, and so I think it was that being able to see that things happen when you do push yourself out of your comfort zone.
So what happened next, Lisa? Because I know you joined Toastmasters and things, didn't you?
Yeah, so I started sort of Fit for More had to grow. It had to become a business rather than a hobby. And I hate saying that, but it was a bit of a hobby. It was a means to an end. It gave me a bit of pocket money. And I'd given up a very good corporate career, started Fit for More, and it was growing. And I remember feeling frustrated because I needed it to grow bigger, because I had to support my children. And I went to a fitness conference where I listened to the guy on stage talk about public speaking. Public speaking is the way to grow your business. That was his message. And it was the only message that I took away from that conference. And he talked about joining Toastmasters. So I came away and I booked to go and visit Toastmasters in Lewes. And I went along, and it was probably as scary as training for the marathon, but in a different way, because you put yourself up on stage, you know it, you've done it. And that was the start of another journey. What was interesting about Toastmasters was that I sort of stepped back into the corporate way of being and tried very much to be, you know, the corporate presenter and to mirror some other people that were in the club. And it didn't work. I tried to, you know, use this language that wasn't mine. What really changed was when I decided to be me and share me, my stories, my opinions, my views, and who I was. That's when it all changed. It all changed.
And so important, isn't it, to be sharing stories? And I mean, I like you, was a member of Toastmasters, but my sort of issue was that when people used to say, oh, but we want to hear a bit of your story, Rachel, I was under the belief that I didn't have one. Because I hadn't scaled a mountain or whatever, or run a marathon, indeed.
A marathon.
But yeah, I don't know why within the last 12 months I've recognized that actually we all sit on a mountain of stories, and it's the everyday ordinary story that can be just such a powerful influence, just as much as kind of the bigger stories, can't they?
Absolutely huge. And then that journey from Toastmasters led me to stand on stage at Inspiring Talks Brighton, and share more of the story that I've just sort of talked about the marriage and all of that. And that was very raw, but I was ready to do it. And that then has led me on to take over running Inspiring Talks Brighton, to take over being a regional director at Athena and to be a presenter on the radio show. And, you know, I can look back, it's almost 10 years now,
Wow.
because I will be 50 in 2021.
Okay.
And I do not recognize the lady that I was then.
Yeah.
And so that's my mission, is to help other women that are feeling lost and unable to work out who they were, you know, have lost their identity, to help them to move forward and find themselves.
Absolutely. And it's just that one decision, isn't it? It doesn't have to be running a marathon, does it? It could be anything. It could be starting a yoga class or going to a needlework class. It's just one small change that can lead to goodness knows where.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you know, I think a lot of people can identify with that thing of being that mum, post-corporate, mum at home with 2 young children. How much parallel do you find in the you now with the corporate you, pre-children?
Oh, that's a really interesting question, because I remember being in the corporate world and feeling that imposter syndrome, that feeling like a fraud. And I did everything I could not to do any presentations, even though I was working in sales and account management. If I had to give a presentation, I would do everything I could not to do it. I would love to go back now and actually grab every opportunity to get out there and speak, because you build rapport, you build relationships, and it's so much easier when you are talking to people.
Yes.
So I would love to go back into the corporate world, who I am now. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And I think that's the thing, isn't it, with speaking, is that when you make the move to do it, the more that you do it, obviously you become more confident at the actual speaking. It also, again, like you're running, it impacts other areas of your life. You know, I used to see this in Toastmasters time and time again. I'd probably been a member for about a year. And to be fair, I was never that real shy person of speaking. I went there to improve my speaking skills rather than to build my confidence around speaking. But I sort of looked back at the people that had joined after me and could clearly see how every single one of them had improved massively, not just in their speaking, but in their general confidence.
Yeah.
And, you know, although I didn't necessarily feel that I'd improved, I thought, well, logically, why would they all have improved and I haven't? It's an imperceptible improvement of confidence, isn't it?
It is, and it's amazing to see people grow.
Yes.
And I've certainly, from running inspiring talks where people can come on stage and they share their stories similar to what we're doing now. And I've seen people that have been, you know, their knees have been locking, they've been sweating, absolutely petrified. And then 6 months later, they're suddenly, you know, doing all these amazing things, writing books, going on TED Talks, doing this, you know, growing their businesses. And it just takes that one tiny little step to step out of your comfort zone, and amazing things can happen.
Yeah. You know, part of what I wanted to do on these sessions was invite you as the guest to share what you think is the key learning from your story. But I think you've probably already done that, Lisa, but I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to it.
Well, I think probably the other message that I would like to get across, especially to, you know, ladies in their 40s who are watching this, that are probably, you know, they could be feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, tired. They've lost who they really are because they're wearing, you know, mum hat, wife hat, corporate career hat, is quite often you feel guilty about putting your needs first, but it's really, really important to put your needs first. And I think, you know, one thing that the marathon taught me as well, and having that space to think, was to realize that actually I needed to think about my happiness, because I could have stayed in the relationship that I was in and carried on living like that. But I had to put my needs first. And yes, of course, it had an impact on lots of other people. And, you know, a lot of guilt and everything comes with that. But sometimes we have to put the guilt to one side and listen to what we need. And there are a lot of women out there that aren't looking after their health because, you know, they think they're too busy to look after their health. But actually just allowing yourself to go a little bit higher up that priority list is really important. Yeah.
Yes, I mean the way I used to, I mean my children are in their 20s now, but when they were younger, I used to find myself saying to people, yes, of course your children are the most important thing in your life. Well, for most people, that is not true, of course. I shouldn't have said of course. That doesn't mean that they have to come first in every scenario. You know, they might be the ultimate most important thing, but sometimes it's you that is the person that's most important.
Yeah, because if you crumble and you don't look after yourself, you won't be able to be there for your children, for your parents, for your family.
No,
so it's really important to not, you know, if you find yourself constantly saying, oh, I'm just so busy, I'm exhausted, I'm so tired, that's a little message to say, hang on a minute, just, you know, step outside and really listen to what's going on inside.
And is that something you do through your fitness coaching? Is that part of
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I still do a little bit of personal training and some classes, but mainly it's around coaching those women that feel too busy, but they, you know, they've had a little bit of a wake-up call. Something's telling them that they need to do something. So I help them to be able to look at things in a different way, to be able to park the guilt to one side and put their needs first. And again, it's like the Toastmasters journey you described earlier, is seeing somebody come out the other side. And I've recently stopped working with a lady, and she's just almost unrecognizable. Her confidence in her marriage, her confidence in how she is with her children, the confidence in her career, that's been huge. And she's got so many different opportunities coming her way that she'd never seen before.
Lovely.
Yeah, so it's incredible.
Yeah. Okay, Lisa, before we wrap up, and as we wrap up, I'm going to ask you to share how people can get in touch with you. But one of the things that I just wanted to do with bits of your story, because this is the bit I love about what I'm doing, is to give you, if I may, and give anybody who's listening, more importantly, perhaps, an idea of how you could use your story in the way that you have. Because I know you have already put it into a presentation, so you kind of have your way of doing this. But if I was listening to your story for the very first time and you'd come to me for speaker coaching, I would say that the place to start your story is that point at which you cross the line. You're building up, you've seen it for years, it looks like such an achievement, but actually it fell flat.
Yeah.
It's that point of starting your story when you're speaking at a point that you really draw the audience in, and the fact that it actually then does a turn and isn't the sort of achievement. So that was just the little bit of a vignette of speaker coaching I wanted to throw in.
Fantastic, thank you.
Before I thank you again for joining me today, it's been fabulous to chat to you and to sort of, you know, hear in more detail parts of your story, because I mean it must be 5 or 6 years ago I heard it originally, if not.
Yes, it must have been.
Yeah. So how can people get in touch with you, Lisa? I mean, obviously we can put it on the page underneath this video, but if they wanted to get in touch, or if indeed people are watching on YouTube, how can they find you?
Yeah, so the best place probably to find me is on Facebook. So if you just search for Lisa Moore, and that's Moore, or look for Fit for More on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram as well, but Facebook is probably the best place. And I do a little 5-day challenge about putting yourself first. So if people want to know more about that, you can find that on my Facebook.
Brilliant. Is that something that they can start whenever they're ready to start, or do you have a set date that you start it and everybody starts together?
I have a set date. So yeah, I'm starting one next Monday, actually, Monday the 30th of November. That'll be the last one before Christmas. And then there'll be another one starting at the end of January.
Okay, so if they like or follow Fit for More, they'll hear about that.
They certainly will, yeah.
Lovely. All right, Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much.
It's been lovely. Thanks, Rachel.